Okay, Xavier, this is going to be fun. It's going to be fun. That's what I believe.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay. Okay, first of all, I want, before I get into you and your backstory, I want to set the stage for the context in which we ran into each other this time here in Jerusalem. We were at JNS, which is kind of like, how would you describe it? Like the Jewish CPAC, maybe? Jewish Turning Point?
Essentially,
Yeah.
I'd say Jewish CPAC.
Yeah. I think it felt like Jewish CPAC. You're right. It's got more of a CPAC vibe than a Turning Point vibe. Um, and you walked in and you were like, it was like Elvis came into the building. You you were such a celebrity with all these conservative Jews. And first of all, I think it should be pointed out that there's a lot of conservative Jews. You don't see them as much in the media, but as you and I both know, it's a huge crowd, or at least a huge crowd for a small population of people. So I wanted to ask you, what was that reception like for you? I wanted to see it through your eyes because it was fun for me to watch, and I thought, how's this for him?
I mean, it's refreshing. It feels validating because doing what I do, it's often a thankless job, at least on the internet.
Yeah.
You deal with a lot of hate and you deal with a lot of backlash all the time. So when you get showered in all of this love, it does throw me off a little bit at times. It takes me like a few minutes or about 5 to 10 people before I start to get used to like, okay, like this is cool. Like no one is coming up to jump me. I don't have to be paranoid that all these people are coming up to me so quickly. But I do enjoy it. It feels really good. Um, and I appreciate the love because I obviously have so much love for this community. I've just told myself and I've told other people who are new to political commentary because it's a similar thing when I go to like a CPAC or a turning point. For better or worse, you kind of have to make yourself numb to praise in the same way that you're numb to hate, because
Mm.
otherwise, emotionally, as a political commentator, you can go on these roller coasters of being super high up, like moments like JNS, where it's like so much love, it feels incredible. Then there's moments that are so low where it's like you're getting canceled. So in order to keep myself steady, I just keep my eyes and my brain focused on the mission, and whatever happens along the way happens.
Okay, and I think that's actually really wise on your part, because you're right. Otherwise, you're going to be like the stock market. Your emotions are going to be like the stock market.
Yeah.
That said, what kind of comments were you getting? I mean, what were people generally saying to you when they walked up to you?
It was a range of things. Some people were saying that they were familiar with my work and very appreciative of me standing up with the Jewish community. A lot of people acknowledging that there aren't many non-Jewish, non-Israeli allies. Some people were much more emotionally heavy, letting me know that maybe they were familiar with me before October 7th or right after, but some people told me things such as my content was the only resource that can make them smile after October 7th. Those kind of comments really do get to me more emotionally. They're heavy. But there was a huge range. People asking me questions, asking me about the backlash, the good, bad, and ugly, about what I do. And overall, just people trying to get me to move to Israel.
Well, that's great. Let's so with that as our kickoff, let's talk about you and your backstory. For those that don't know it, let's talk about that. You were raised where and how?
So I was born in Southside Chicago, and then I say my parents fled the hood like refugees and went to the middle of nowhere cornfields of Illinois. So I ended up growing up in a small, tiny cornfield town of Pontiac, Illinois. It's like 10,000
Oh
people,
yeah, yeah.
95% white, complete opposite demographic of Chicago. But then I spent my summers mostly in Southside Chicago.
Sounds like a sitcom.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gave me a lot of perspective because I lived in two completely different worlds and I had to learn
Yeah.
how to navigate these two different environments. And it just teaches you a lot about adapting, but also overall, the deeper lesson is learning how to be consistently yourself, even in environments that are polar opposite.
Yes. Yeah, especially because probably, I'm guessing, fill in the blanks for me here, as a young man, you probably felt uncomfortable for not fitting in. And then as you matured, you realized not fitting in is kind of amazing. Just being able to be you wherever whatever the venue is a skill most people don't have. But am I reading the room
Of
there?
course, it took a while because I would feel like I was too black to be around the white people in my hometown, and then too white to be around the white people, and or so yeah, both my hometown.
Right.
So it was like I could never pick a struggle truly. And I remember lessons I would learn, like I would go, and my parents were so particular about like me getting a better education. And this is why they left everything that they ever knew so that I would grow up in a better environment. And me speaking the way that I do, I would go to Chicago, and they would look at me like I was crazy because I knew how to utilize verbs correctly. So then my mom would overhear me talking to some of the kids in Chicago, and she would pull me to the side and be like, this is not how you speak. Like, you don't need to do this. Like, you trying to fit in is not going to benefit you in any way. If we wanted you to fit in when you were here, then we would have stayed here. So it took a while, but eventually I realized, being different and having a story is so much more powerful than it's so much more powerful than just being ordinary or pedestrian, as I say now.
I'm hearing you talk, and I'm thinking that sometimes you must have felt like Carlton, and other times you felt like the Fresh Prince, like depending on your circumstances, right?
Yes, it was so back and forth. I actually, every time I give a speech, I talk about it. I say I was my backstory is like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but backwards, where my eldest brother got into trouble once, and then the whole family moved to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. So then at some point you ended up joining the Black Lives Matter movement. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so my family is very progressive for the most part. My immediate family, I should say. There's a lot of liberals in my family, a lot of Marxists in my family, and I was never extreme. A lot of people do assume that I was far left. I was never far left, but I was definitely very progressive, very liberal. And in high school is when it started because I wanted to feel more tapped into my roots. And when I
Mm,
got to college, the whole story there, you become more woke, more involved on campus, those type of
yeah.
things. And then in my early 20s, I did a lot of activism just for talking about racial issues. And that was before 2020. I was talking about BLM for years. And then when everything happened with George Floyd, at that point, I stepped up in my community, and I tried to help organize some events. And I was advocating all over the internet. And it was a side hustle, but like I wasn't making any money from it. It was just like a passion essentially.
Wow. And then you began this process, to make a long story short, you made this process towards truth. I've heard you talk about this, and I really appreciate the way the context, because it's not about left or right. It's not about labels. You may end up voting a certain way, but the point is that you're trying to arrive rather at empirical truth. So tell me about your journey to empirical truth.
So in 2020, I was truly just bored, and I was sitting there with my roommate at the time's girlfriend. And we were watching this show called The Circle. And The Circle is basically it's kind of like the show Big Brother. It's on Netflix, except you're all in different apartment buildings and you each play a character online. And then you communicate with your competitors through this social platform called The Circle. And you're either yourself, or you're a different personality from yourself, or you're a full-blown catfish, which is a completely different person. And my character, and I applied for the show as a joke, just to make my friends laugh on my little private fake Instagram that I had. And I ended up being selected out of 25,000 people to be one of the finalists on the show. And as I was getting ready for the show and like moving along in the process, that's when everything kicked off with BLM getting super intense. And the producers of the show, I have to word this part carefully because of contracts I signed back then,
Sure.
but let's just say it was strongly encouraged that I went along with this role of portraying a woke white sorority girl named Samantha who did all of my BLM activism and talks about all these different causes. And because of that, I decided that this was going to be what I do. And I was like, if I go on the show and my whole shtick is that I am teaching people how to be a woke activist from the perspective of a woke white sorority girl, that I needed to study all the counter arguments, that I was ready for any debate. And because of that, I started studying without confirmation bias truly for the first time. And I wanted to make an entire series debunking PragerU videos. And in the process, I ended up debunking myself instead. And I realized that so many of these values and less even just the values, but more it was these principles that I was standing on regarding social justice. I realized there was no foundation there. I realized that there was no substance to the BLM movement. I realized that socialism is not the answer. I realized how fraudulent the Democratic Party has been for a very long time, and particularly how nefarious the Democrat Party has been when it comes to their treatment of Black people and the way they gaslight my community. So after all of that, I ended up backing out of the show in October, just days before I was supposed to fly out and get ready to film the show. And after that, I was like, well, what do I do now? And then the election happened a couple weeks later, and I decided, you know what? After a conversation with, again, my roommate, I was like, I want to start speaking out about what it is that I learned. And I took a few more months, continued to research, make sure that I wasn't going through just like some crisis or phase. And then I started speaking out about conservative ideas.
It is, I think, I'm not sure why this is, but it is challenging for people to be intellectually honest. And my theory on that is that change is hard. In other words, if you get new information that causes you to have to change, in your case, your life, and I'm sure you've gotten a lot of pushback, obviously, for what you've done. That kind of change doesn't come easily. It comes with a cost. And so maybe it is theory, curious what you think about this, that people become aware that they need to change, that there is actual revealed truth, but they don't want to pay the cost to get there. So they just kind of decide to live in the matrix, if I can give the analogy.
100%. It's so much easier to fit in with the popular narrative, first of all. And then to be someone that's loud and vocal about one issue and then realizing you're wrong, it's mortifying. It sounds like a fairy tale now because I have this career that I love and I get to go around the world talking about my ideas, and I literally get to put my opinions out there for a living. And it's worked out for me because I've worked really hard and been very focused and steadfast. But in the beginning, it was a very terrible, excruciating process, and that's one thing I have to remind people a lot, that it's not just this easy, oh, well, I changed my mind. It's like, I was shamed by the people who supported me. The people who supported me in my woke activism thought that I was stabbing them in the chest, not even the back. I had family members who, to this day, still will not speak to me because of my change in views. I even went on Dr. Phil to talk about the fact that my dad and I didn't speak for years. My brother still won't speak to me. I have cousins who wouldn't let me go to funerals. Like it was very mortifying. And even to this day, people try to throw my backstory in my face. Like every time I'm debating someone, they were like, well, you were wrong before. So what about now? How can you be so sure now? It's like, you know what? Maybe I'm not. And if I come to the conclusion later that I'm wrong, then I will walk whatever I said back.
Yeah.
And I would say what I've learned if I become privy to new information. But it's a humbling experience. But being honest was the best thing, because at the end of the day, I have to look myself in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of, you said traveling and stuff. What brings you to Israel?
Well, two things. Well, three really. I came for JNS. I did a panel of media personalities from various sectors of media to talk about just different media narratives when it comes to spreading the truth about Israel and combating the lies. And since I was coming for that, I ended up partnering with the city of Jerusalem to make some content promoting tourism, because it's a shame to me to see how there's fewer people here than when I was here the first time. It is better than, this is my fourth visit. The second and third visits I was here, it was like a ghost town. It was so sad to me.
Yeah.
But trying to promote that this is somewhere that no matter if you're Jewish, Christian, secular, like you should come to Israel. So it was incredible partnering with them. And now at this point, I'm on vacation.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, little known thing, which you and I both know, my friend, which is that the food in Israel. Let's talk about that just for a second. The food is insane.
Mm-hmm. The food is insane.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like there's so many different cultures here. Like people really underestimate the amount of cultural diversity and multiculturalism that there is here in is there Israel in general, or I can't even speak. And Israel in general, and especially Tel Aviv, I'm like salivating thinking about the food I'm about to talk about already. There's so many places. I went to a Jordanian place next door. You go to somewhere that's Arabic. After that, you go to somewhere that's Afghani, Armenian, like all these different cuisines, and it's like the best of the best. I think my favorite food is arais. I'm probably saying it incorrectly. It's like a Arabic dish. It's like this meat shoved into a pita, and then they put it in the oven. Unbelievable. Shakshuka is amazing.
Yeah.
The hummus, everybody loves the hummus
The
here
hummus here is like, it's not like the hummus you buy at Trader Joe's in
at
America. It's
all.
right. Yeah.
It's so much more fresh. Even the fruit platter that was at my hotel when I walked in was divine. Like everything here is so much more fresh. It doesn't have the additives, and yet somehow it's still so much more addicting without all the chemicals that they put in the food in America. So I have loved the food. I've went on my fair share of food tours since I've been here.
Yeah, you're right. It's fresh. And I always tell people, if you're in the States, you're getting a banana that's been flown for who knows how many hours. Let's just say conservatively 5 to 10 hours flown from wherever it is, maybe much longer. And in Israel, you're getting a banana from 20 minutes from where you're buying it, right? So
Yeah.
it's a different context. When Xavier, I'm curious, when did you catch the Israel bug? Like when did this at what point? Because there's a certain point in the journey in this path up the mountain of intellectual honesty where people have to confront where they are in Israel, which is so interesting, right? So many countries in the world. This is a tiny little place, and yet you have to pick a side.
Mhm.
When did that occur to you?
So, when I visited Israel for the first time in June of 2023, I came in pretty blind. The only thing that I knew really about Israel was that they were in this constant conflict with so many people and that Israel was fighting to exist. And my general understanding was that Israel was more often than not in just a complete state of defense. That was all I really knew coming in. And how my first trip even came about is Marissa, the CEO of PragerU, I went to a Shabbat dinner at her home and I fell in love with Jewish culture, first of all. I just, because my background really liked tradition in a lot of ways. So I loved seeing Shabbat. It's like, wow, you have Thanksgiving every weekend. And like everybody just like calms down for a second. That was so incredible to see. And then learning just simple things like it's very simple to Jewish people, but to me, it was mind blowing. Like how no matter where you are in the world, any synagogue you go to, you're learning the same section of the Torah at the same time. Just being on the same page like that, even after being dispersed all over the world,
Literally,
blew
Xavier,
my
being on the
mind.
same page, like not
Yeah.
even as an expression, literally on the same page.
I was so baffled by that. I'm like, Christians can't get anything together. Like, Christians can't even agree on the weather. So to see the Jewish community be on the same page about the Torah or like on the same page in the Torah, like it was mind blowing. And yes, obviously there's diversity within the Jewish community too, but the
Sure.
core, the most important things I feel like are still aligned. That to me was amazing. And Marissa throughout there, she goes, well, I go on a family vacation every year to Israel. You should come with me. And I looked at her, I was like, be careful inviting me somewhere because one thing about me, I will book a flight. Like I will pull up my Expedia right now. You give me the dates. And she told me the dates. I was booked in 24 hours. So I came here and, I fell so in love with Israel in the first 9 of the 10 days that I was here. It was the combination of things that I enjoy. I spent a good amount of time in Tel Aviv. I went to Jerusalem, went to the north, went to the Dead Sea. I went all over. And it was the nightlife, it was the history, it was the food, it was the wine, it was, the people. It was just everything about Israel completely blew my mind. My concept, like I came into Israel, first of all, thinking it was going to be all white. And then to see that it's 50 Shades of Brown, it was like everything that people tried to tell me was just completely wrong. And I threw it out the
Yeah.
window. And it was like the more I learned, the more I was fascinated. That being said, two things happened on the last day that made me really become a fighter for Israel and not just a lover of Israel. Is on the last day of my tour, I was up in the north and Lebanon had tried to send in these ghetto missiles over to Israel, but they were ghetto, so they didn't make it and they landed back in Lebanon. So I kind of heard that faintly. And then after that, I felt on the ground shaking Israel sending their response missiles over there. And when the ground was shaking, I'm hearing these loud noises. I freaked out. I completely lost it. I was on the like I was like I literally wanted to go into like fetal position. I was so freaked out. And right as I'm trying to calm down, I look up and I see this little girl is crying profusely, and her mom is just comforting her, like this sigh of like it's happening again, telling her like, and I couldn't understand the language she was speaking, but I could tell like, oh, she's so used to this. And what is it like having to explain this to your child? And it clicked for me. Here I was feeling like I was in paradise for 9 days. I completely forgot that I'm in one of the most high conflict, high attention areas in the world. And then simultaneously, I go and I checked Twitter for the first time and I saw all the backlash on the photos I had posted. I posted from the Dead Sea and riding a camel. And next thing I know, it's like I'm getting called a shill and all these different things and seeing all these anti-Semitic tropes be put out there. They're like, oh, we see the Jews that bought you now. And I'm like, what? Just because I visited Israel? And that was when I learned that anti-Semitism is even still a thing. I thought anti-Semitism was archaic at this point. Like in my, because I didn't even know that many
Oh,
Jewish
that's
people.
okay. So you're going along, you're having a good time, you're getting to see the country, you're just enjoying yourself. And then suddenly people are hating on you for that, for
Simply
doing
for
that.
being
Yeah.
hating me simply for being here. And I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. And all the narratives people started throwing at me. And then, so the combination of those two things happening on the last day really just made me fired up about, combating the propaganda around Israel, and that's fueling anti-Semitism. And I started
Okay.
making content about it in August of 23, which I don't know if you've seen my Walk With Me series, but one of my very first Walk With Me's was actually about how anti-Semitism is ghetto and rooted in people being broke and bitter. And that video ended up going extremely viral 4 months later. But yeah, when October 7th happened, on top of that, I saw how the media narrative had flipped in about 12 hours. It went from everybody being on the same page that this is one of the worst humanitarian crises that we've ever seen, especially in my lifetime, to suddenly people are denying that it happened, pulling down the clips from the internet, and everyone just gaslighting Israel as if Israel was the problem.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I became aware of you was you did a very powerful October 7th video where you went to Kfar Aza and you and I actually did the same thing within, I think, days of each other.
Mm.
And so I remember, first of all, watching your video and thinking the same things you were thinking, such as, is this possible? Like, is what I'm looking at, is this actually possible that this happened? Because it's so brutal and so savage that your brain says, well, I can't I still feel that way. I can't understand what I saw.
Mhm.
Um, and I know you went through a similar journey at that time. And I'd encourage everybody to go look at Xavier's October 7th video. It's 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 there's a lot of people that have been on that journey, but the way that he captured it, you should all see it. Coming off of that, I mean, that video, that must have been, you're starting to put two and two together about the level of, I don't like to use word like buzzwords like hate, but I'm going to go with hatred, the actual English word. The level of hatred here that
Mhm.
exists here, you started to really fully understand and embrace what that looks like.
Mhm. 100%. When I came, it was very intense. So after I became a voice for October 7th and quickly realized that I'm one of few at the time,
Mhm.
and I just kept, tripling down. One of the tropes that I kept getting is, oh, because people had forgotten by that point that I had been to Israel already. And they're like, well, you go to Israel, see how racist they are, see that it's a shame or that it's a sham, all these different things. So that's when I decided I'm going back. So I went 90 days after October 7th, and I went to Kfarza, I went to Neuros, I went to Ofakim, I went to
Mhm.
all these different
Mhm.
places, Nova festival site, and I took this videographer, and it's probably amongst the work that I'm most proud of in my entire career,
Yeah.
putting that little mini short doc together. And what made it so much more intense, that not a lot of people know, is after I went to all of these places, just by coincidence, I ended up meeting my good friend, Ashira Solomon, who had been trying to reach out to me, but my DMs are a war zone, so I don't check them that often. And she had been trying to contact me about a panel of Black leaders who stand with Israel that was meeting in New York. Happened to be 2 days after my visit to Israel, and it happened to be where my layover was. So I was like, okay, well, that's God's timing. So after I left Israel, after going on this tour of the Gaza Strip and having this experience that I will never forget, being able to still smell the hatred in the air, and that's as literal as it gets. I flew back, I stayed in New York, and then I went to this panel, and to my surprise, ended up watching the 47-minute film, which is this compilation of footage from October 7th, taken by Hamas, taken of Hamas, from, Ring doorbells, from survivors, from, all of the above. A lot of them are actually videos where Hamas recorded themselves doing terrible things and sent it to the family members in a WhatsApp chat. Like, it was so intense because here I was now seeing the destruction happen in the exact places that I just was. And it was overly deep for me because I remember things as detailed as the blood splatter on the walls and the footprints on the ground. And it still looked exactly like that when I was there. And I saw it happen on video. And that, to me, had me very unsettled for a very long time. But I made a commitment to everyone that was there that the anti-Semites are going to be sick of me, because now this is an issue that is truly deeper to my core than I ever could have imagined. And I've been unapologetically a Zionist ever since.
Xavier, when we look at what's going on in America, which is unprecedented for so many people, and I think some people felt with the change in administration that it would stop. But the money, they're working on it, but the money is still flowing in to support that. From we know where we think that came from, but I don't want to get into that at the moment. But are these, it seems like there's a lot of crossover between the Black Lives Matter movement and now the Jew hating movement. Do you think that's accurate? That it's just kind of one movement has metastasized? It has, maybe a movement has picked a new cause, same people, different cause. What are your thoughts?
Well, the movement has picked a lot of causes up, because one thing I say is, more often than not, when a movement is fraudulent and loses steam, they turn it into a Black person's issue. And what I mean by that is, when you see this Free Palestine issue, for a very long time, they have done their best to intertwine themselves with BLM and vice versa. It's the same Marxist mentality, but it's a combination of two things. One, you have a lot of people in America who falsely view what's happening here in Israel as a Black versus white issue. They view it as an issue rooted in white supremacy, which really does not make any sense. If you even just look up the demographics of Israel, it doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
But it's easier for people to compartmentalize it that way, because instead of viewing this as its own individual conflict, they try to equate it to something that they're familiar with over in America. But it is a conscious effort that's made by the Free Palestine movement, because they try to take every intersectionality of a minority group and turn it into Free Palestine. And I saw that when I went inside of the UCLA encampments. I snuck in and went under disguise. And one of the things that I saw was there were these signs all over where it would say, if you're Black, Black Lives Matter, Free Palestine. If you're Hispanic, border walls are hurting the Mexican community, Free Palestine. If you are Native American, Indigenous people, Free Palestine.
Wow.
If you're LGBT, civil rights issue, Free Palestine. Didn't matter what the demographic was or how ironic the demographic was, they were still turning it into a Free Palestine issue. And that is what has led so many people who have ran with all these other woke religion causes to jump on board about being anti-Israel without even knowing what's going on in Israel.
Do you think, when you were there and just in the people you interviewed, so on and so forth, what percentage do you think actually knows what's going on in Israel?
It's hard to say a percentage, but I'll say this. It's very few that actually are educated on what's going on. There you have different types of people there. You have people there who actually are just anti-Semitic as it gets. They're fully aware and just hate Jews. You
Mhm.
have a lot of paid bad apples there. If you look closely at some of the pictures of the encampments, you'll see some familiar faces from the Columbia encampments. There are definitely people who are traveling around to be a part of all of the hatred that was going
It's a
on.
hatred roadshow.
It's a hatred roadshow. And and what was baffling to me was this one particular story that I always have to tell whenever I talk about the UCLA encampments is, is so imagine this is the encampment. Right outside of it is the Zionist counter protest where they're playing footage from October 7th on this huge jumbotron. And I walk over because I see a bunch of kids are pushing the plywood apart and like watching it. And I'm like, I have to hear what they're saying about this. So I go over in disguise and I hear them all asking, like, what is this? Like, why do they keep playing this? It's so loud. Like, are they bragging? Is this Israel bragging about what they did to Gaza? Like, they thought that this was the IDF going in and attacking Palestinians. And I said to them, I was like, oh, just all nonchalantly go, that's just, footage from October 7th. And they all looked at me, all five of these students who at this point had spent at least 2 weeks inside of this encampment, they all looked at me and go, what's October 7th? October 7th of what year? And I was beyond mortified because it was in that moment I realized, oh, these are all just a bunch of people who are hateful anti-Zionists. These are kids who are really just underclassmen misfits looking for a sense of community because right now they have none. This is their way of trying to find people who are trying to lead a cause. And if
Mhm.
I only had the information that they are falsely given, I would understand why they think the way
Right,
they think.
right, right.
All they're being told is that white people are doing a genocide of black people in the Middle East. That's all the information that they hear. The disinformation, I should say, that they hear. So after that, I realized, oh, we really have to just focus on educating these people rather than condemning some of them because some of them really do not know why they're there. And that seemed to be the overall sentiment.
When you presented some of these people with new information, what kind of did you see um, any change? Any sense of, wow, okay, wait, maybe I don't understand what's going on here?
Well, since I was in the encampment, I was surrounded by people who had weapons. I wasn't going to risk getting jumped. Like my friend Cam Higby was there with me. He ended up being physically
Ah,
thrown out and
Cam's an
bear
amazing,
sprayed.
Cam's an amazing guy. I love Cam.
He is. Cam is actually he and I are who went into the encampment together, and he got a lot of footage there, but he eventually got exposed. And when he went back, he was bear maced or bear sprayed. And when I was there, when I presented them with the information of October 7th, and I had to say very minimal details, I could tell a light bulb went off in all of their heads, and they all were inquisitive at that point. And I could tell that they had questions. I hope and I pray that after I told them that, they went back and did some research about October 7th. But I could see immediately in their eyes, like they realized in that moment, maybe I don't have all the information. So hopefully they allowed that voice in their head to lead them to do more research.
So we've got this movement still very well funded movement, still going on the left. Question for you: in your quest for the truth, are you getting any blowback from now what we're hearing is some on the right? And I almost hesitate to say the right because I think they're the views that are being expressed are not consistent with the core conservative values that we all believe in. But be that as it may, we'll just say the right for the lack of a better term. Are you getting any pushback from that crowd?
Absolutely. I mean,
Wow.
I there's the new term, the woke right. I often say the fringe right. People are often shocked when I tell them that I probably get more hate from the right than I do the left at this point. And
Wow.
I identify myself as right of center and as the sane right, as I often say as well, and someone who just tries to be objective and truth. But you have the fringe right very, very loud, particularly on X. And what I have to just remind people is with the fringe right, they're very loud online and they amplify each other. So it seems like that's the general consensus of the right. But in reality, that's just the loud keyboard warriors. The keyboard warriors are always going to seem the loudest because they have no love in their lives. They usually don't have jobs and they have nothing else to do from the basement. So those aren't the people that you meet out and about. I meet people on the right all the time in public, and it is always positive interaction, or almost always. More often than not, they're sane, they're sensible, they have themselves together, they're well kept. It's like that's what I view the right as. This fringe right that's going on, these people who are just these bizarre conspiracy theorists who blame all of their problems on Israel rather than the fact that they won't just take a bath and go get a job. Those people, I don't affiliate with that side of the right. Those are not my people.
Um, there was a song when I was young called "Get a Haircut and Get a Real Job," and I'm just thinking you might make a new one called "Get a Bath and Get a Real Job."
Yeah.
I'd like to propose a term for you. I call them keyboard cowboys
Keyboard cowboys.
because the alliteration, it kind of works. Keyboard
Mhm.
cowboys. You can even, if you want, spell cowboy with a K, keyboard cowboys. But so you get a lot of hate from those folks. Help me understand what is the, I mean, what are they saying to you? Like what's the general sort of overall narrative that you get thrown in your face?
I could just pull up my DMs and read it to you anytime right now so you can see what they say. Like, it's usually like, what, I have a screenshot.
Let's do
I
it.
just, because it was funny to me. Because at this point, I have no choice but to laugh. I want to read this to you
This
verbatim,
is almost our version of mean tweets, mean DMs.
just to give you a consensus. So you can see here, I'm not even lying to you.
Okay.
In order, can you censor me? Or if you want to, because I can just say it full blown.
No, go ahead.
All right. Stupid ass N word. N word slave, bitch, monkey. I am a fan. I love you. That's from the Jewish Justice Fighters. So shout out to them. N word hard R. God bless you, brother. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. You should kill your mom. N word. Like,
Okay, so
this
this is
is like
just,
the back to back to back.
I mean,
And it's just funny to me because the order.
these are real people? I mean, this sounds, one of the things that strikes me is it sounds incredibly bereft of brain power. Like we're talking, it sounds really dumb. This is just a common thing you're getting.
It's a combination. Like some of them are bots, and then a lot of the times it's like anytime I tweet something about Israel, people flood to my DMs to call me. It's usually N-word, shill, goyim, bought and paid for, coon, traitor, Uncle Tom, like you name it. It's like it's the list. It is always the list. And it's like I just do not care. Like I cannot verbally express enough how much I don't get. Like it's funny to me. The reason I even have that screenshot because I posted on my close friends the other day because it's funny to me. And then the juxtaposition of between every other hate or every two hate messages, I get this really nice, loving message, and then it's back to the hate. So it's like I have to laugh at it because these are people who are sad. These are people who live very sad lives. There are people on the internet that I despise. I despise what they stand for. I despise everything they represent. But I would never go out of my way to send these people hate messages because
Yeah, no,
I
it's
have a life
ridiculous.
to live. I live my life and I enjoy my life. I'm not going to go out of my way to send hate. So the people who do that, it's like you're truly just miserable.
Xavier, what do you see? Because this is where my brain goes. I see all this incoming. What do you see as the answer? In other words, for you, with what you're doing and the platform that you have, what is the way forward for, especially for, look, we know that there's always going to be village idiots, but I know that your ultimate goal is to reach your generation. And so to push past all that and say, okay, but I have a message, and this is the message that I want to reach with all the reasonable adults of my generation. And by the way, who is the majority? To your point, a reasonable person doesn't go on and hit your DMs with language like that. Those are not reasonable people. So with that giant caveat that I'm giving you, what's your vision for how to reach a generation with the truth, especially on this issue.
You know what I always quote Marissa on this. Marissa, the CEO of PragerU. She says, education is how we got into this mess, so education is how we need to get out of this mess. And we really just have to push the truth out there. You know, what I tell people when it comes to Israel specifically and with the Jewish community, I feel like it's the right message, but the message isn't being conveyed well enough. And on the other side, it's like they have the wrong message, but they're great communicators. So you can't spend more time fighting this narrative of who you're not, that you're not spending enough energy showing the world who you are. You have to show the world the truth. People still are like, you might hear it a lot on this side of the aisle, but the general public hasn't heard all the details about how great the IDF is, how out of their way the IDF goes to have integrity, to save life, to preserve life, how much the Jewish community does that in general. Like, those type of things needs to be put out there, but also just, you know, without going into a state of defense, but debunking the narratives that the other side says, while doing so in the way of, you're just putting the truth out there. Forget what they're saying. Just put the truth out there. And the more you put the truth out there, people are slowly going to come to it. Because the reality is, the truth is always 7 times slower than the lie. The lie will get to everyone much faster. But slowly but surely, we will get to where more and more people are hearing the truth. And we just have to stay consistent on that.
Do you do debates and things like that? I know you do your show. I watch your show. Have you done debates and things of that nature?
I do debates sometimes. Sometimes I prefer conversationalist panels. I don't like to do debates because it's become too clickbaity, and it becomes this thing of just like, what can I say to make the other person look dumb? How can I try to catch this person in like a little like in nuance in each thing? It's like, I don't care for that. I just get annoyed and uninterested in the conversation way too quickly when it's just like a hostile type of situation. But like sitting down, having like a panel of people or a group of people with different perspectives, I love doing that.
Yeah.
I've done several for Middle Ground. I've done many.
The conversation, yeah. And you probably find that those on the extreme left and extreme right aren't interested in the conversation part anyway. So again, you're reaching those with common sense.
Yeah. I've just given up on reaching the extreme of either side. You know, the right and the left have a fringe side to them. And I've tried to do a better job of no longer equating the far left to the entirety of the left, because there's a lot of people who are left of center who are good-hearted, sane people, just have difference of opinions. Opinions I often find, I think, are wrong, but that's their prerogative. But when it comes to the far left and the far right, a lot of them are lost causes until they finally get some maturity.
What do you think, as we're, there's our elected leaders are trying to put the country in a different direction, and given your background and your experience, are they missing something? In other words, there a lot of steps and measures that are being taken are very positive, but as a word of advice, if you could put your coach hat on, is there something that you see, knowing the BLM structure, knowing how it works, knowing what's at work here? Is there some advice you'd give to elected officials to say, you should look into this a little bit more?
Well, I think we need to crack down a bit more on domestic terrorism. You know, I'm all for freedom of speech, but like, and for the right to protest, but it's getting to the point where it's violent. You know, when there's rioting consistently happening from a group, when these encampments have people going and stopping kids from going to class, and, throwing things at Jewish kids on universities, these type of things like need to be shut down. And when people are just completely like, when they're chanting Antifada and like trying to call for the demise of Western society as a whole, that is anti-American. That is domestic terrorism. That is treason. Oh, excuse me. So if you're doing that, I think that there needs to be a lot more accountability put on people like that, and it needs to happen much sooner.
Yeah, and you're talking about not just student quote unquote riots; they're not protests, but all kinds of other activity that we're seeing.
Yeah. Like, these movements are getting just bizarre. Like, the way that they try to communicate their message is getting bizarre. So I think that there needs to be some accountability put there. And I think that would save a lot of damage from happening. Because look, if somebody's on the different side of the aisle, I think they have the right to voice their opinion. But there is a point where when the words turns into violence, or it turns into stopping people from being able to go to class or from living their lives, that's when it becomes criminal.
Okay, yeah. I see where you're going with that. That's good advice. Let me ask you this last question. For um, somebody like you, left or right, doesn't matter. Somebody like you who has bought into a false narrative and they kind of have a sense, "Mm, maybe these guys are lying to me." What is the first step that you would ask them to take towards the brave road of actually acknowledging, again, reality, as a good friend of mine likes to say, reality is an acquired taste. It's a good one. On
You
that
know,
road to reality, what's the first, thinking back to your own journey, what's the first step?
list out your principles that you currently stand on and then go and research the counter arguments for each. And then when you do that, you'll be able to see which has more depth. So if you believe in point A and you start looking into point B1, B2, B3, you'll be able to see, does A have A1, A2, A3, and how, like, which has more depth and has more substance to it, and which ultimately has history on the side of your information. So when you go and you look into, like, for example, when I was debunking myself on everything with BLM, I started looking into the actual statistics. I started looking into where's the money going. I started
Mhm.
looking into, all the different elements of what it was I was standing for and realized, oh, there's not much substance over here. Yes, we can go and say that the police are hunting down Black people, but are they really? Do the stats show that? Is where the money goes say that? Is there any reform that's happening? What would that reform even look like? Like, you have to start looking at into the nuances of these things that you claim that you're passionate about. Otherwise, you don't stand on any values. You're just falling for everything at that point.
So, in a very simplistic way, I had this illustration in my mind when you were talking. In a very simplistic way, you're saying, just like you go on Amazon and you're looking for a product, let's say a printer, and you compare five printers. What does this printer do? What does this printer do? And you look at the reviews and you figure out which is the best product that I need to, what you're really trying to find out, truthfully, is not just best product, but which of these things is actually going to work, right? Which printer is actually going to work, print
Mhm.
out paper, not jam all the time. Like, that's ultimately what we're seeking, right? Is we want something that works. You're saying literally take the same approach that you do to any kind of purchase you make and apply it to worldview and say, okay, these are the claims that all these products make. What actually happens? Do they print, so to speak? And what ultimately works and doesn't work? And if you're willing to take all the labels off and take all the personalities off and just look at it in a stark, fact-based way, that's your answer. I mean,
Mhm.
does that work for you? Did I reframe it in that way
I mean, it
successfully
makes
for you?
sense. It's like you go onto Amazon and you're buying into a narrative. If you're going to buy into a narrative, you might as well check the reviews, check the description. A lot of people go and buy things without checking the description. And then they realize, oh, it didn't come with this, and this that were in the picture. Oh, yeah, because it says in the description it's not included. So it's like, yeah, you have to go and you have to do your research thoroughly, compare, put them side by side and see which one stacks up better.
Just for an example, I'd love to throw this one at you. What Hamas actually says in their charter, or
Mhm.
what we see from that great channel on Memory of different Muslim leaders in America making statements. Just from those statements, and I'm sure you've seen a whole bunch of those, right? Is that a good example?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I tell people how Hamas wants to wipe out Jews and Christians worldwide, and they're like, no, they don't. I'm like, literally in their charter since 1988, they have called for wiping out Jews and Christians worldwide and taking out Western society. So how do you say that that's not it? And they're like, well, they don't stand for that today. I'm like, okay, then what are they doing? Wiping out Jews, Christians are next. And really, they wiped out some Christians too. So it's like, I don't understand how people refuse to look into things after it's been 2 years, but that's how people are. People are comfortable in being ignorant. And I always say your comfort zone is a very dangerous place to be, especially when it comes to spewing out information that's leading to the demise of people.
Well, if you're for everybody that's listening, if you're comfortable with being uncomfortable, we'd love you to check out what this amazing guy is doing. Can you throw out, where do you want them to land? What's the place you want them to land to check you out?
All of the above. I have a new show on YouTube called Respectfully Xavier. Xavier is
It's
irregularly
very
spelled.
fun, by the way. It's very fun.
Thank you. It's Xaviaer. Make sure you get that right. And then my Instagram, Facebook, Threads, TikTok, all at Xavier. I'm most known for Instagram, I believe. And my Twitter is at Xavier D.
Okay, well, listen, thank you for taking time to spend a couple minutes with us. It was, and again, it was so it was so fun to see the reception you had the other day. I just pray that you, as much hate as you get, you'll get those kind of receptions tenfold. How about that?
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time too.